Here's something that might completely reshape how you think about global climate action. While the world debates and delays, China is quietly building what could be the game-changing solution to our emission crisis. But there's a catch that most experts don't want to talk about. China has just announced construction plans for what will become the planet's most massive solar installation. Covering a staggering 610 square kilometers across the remote Tibetan plateau. To put this mind-blowing scale into perspective, imagine an area equivalent to the entire city of Chicago. But instead of skyscrapers and streets, picture nothing but gleaming solar panels stretching beyond the horizon. This isn't just another renewable energy project. It's a statement that could fundamentally alter the global power balance in clean energy. But here's where it gets controversial. While Western nations continue setting distant targets and making promises, China is installing solar capacity at a pace that's leaving everyone else in the dust. The numbers are almost unbelievable. In just the first 6 months of this year, China added 212 gigawatts of solar capacity. That's more than the entire solar infrastructure of the United States, which took decades to build and only reached 178 gigawatts by the end of 2024. And this is the part most people miss. China's carbon emissions actually dropped by 1% during the first half of the year compared to the same period last year. What makes this truly remarkable isn't just the decrease itself, but the fact that it's happening while the country's electricity consumption is surging upward by 3.7%. Think about that for a moment. More power consumption, yet fewer emissions. It's a combination that many thought was impossible at this scale. This trend suggests something that could send shockwaves through international climate negotiations. China's carbon emissions may have already peaked, years ahead of their government's official 2030 target. If confirmed, this would represent one of the most significant developments in the fight against climate change since the Paris Agreement. However, here's where the debate gets heated. Despite these impressive gains, China remains the world's largest greenhouse gas emitter by a significant margin. Critics argue that while the progress is noteworthy, it's still nowhere near enough to make a meaningful dent in global climate change. Lori Milivirta, lead analyst at the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, puts it bluntly. China needs to get to that 3% territory as soon as possible, Milivirta emphasizes, highlighting the gap between current progress and what's actually needed to meet their ambitious climate commitments. What's happening in China right now is fundamentally different from previous emission reductions the country has experienced. In the past, emissions fell primarily during economic slowdowns when industrial activity decreased. This time, however, something unprecedented is occurring. The economy is growing, electricity demand is increasing, but emissions are still falling. The secret lies in the explosive growth of renewable energy sources. Solar, wind, and nuclear power are expanding so rapidly that they're easily outpacing the increased energy demand. Solar power has already surpassed hydropower as a clean energy source in China, and is positioned to overtake wind power this year, potentially becoming the country's dominant renewable energy source. Alongside solar expansion, China added 51 gigawatts of wind capacity in the first half of the year alone, a figure that would be considered remarkable for most countries to achieve in several years. Li Shuo, director of the China Climate Hub at the Asia Society Policy Institute in Washington, describes this shift as a pivotal moment in global climate efforts. This is a moment of global significance, offering a rare glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak climate landscape, he explains. The implications extend far beyond China's borders, as it demonstrates that economic growth and emission reductions can happen simultaneously, a concept that many developed nations have struggled to prove. But here's where the story gets complicated, and frankly, where most mainstream coverage falls short. Li cautions that China's continued heavy dependence on coal presents a serious obstacle to sustained progress. The country's economy still needs to transition toward less resource-intensive sectors, and as Lee puts it, there's still a long road ahead. Let's zoom in on that massive Tibetan solar farm for a moment, because the scale is almost incomprehensible. Picture walking through what appears to be an endless sea of solar panels stretching toward distant mountains. White two-story buildings dot the landscape at regular intervals, serving as maintenance stations and control centers. In a uniquely practical touch, sheep graze peacefully on the scrubby vegetation growing beneath the panels, creating an unexpected harmony between renewable technology and traditional pastoral life. Currently, about 2/3 of the designated land has been equipped with solar panels. Once construction is complete, this single installation will house more than 7 million individual panels, generating sufficient electricity to power approximately 5 million households. To put this in perspective, that's enough clean energy for a city larger than Sydney or Los Angeles. However, this brings us to a challenge that reveals a fascinating paradox in China's renewable energy strategy. Most of these massive solar and wind installations are built in the country's relatively sparsely populated western regions, where land is abundant and conditions are ideal for renewable energy generation. The problem? The majority of China's population and industrial centers are concentrated thousands of miles away in the eastern provinces. The distribution of green energy resources is perfectly misaligned with the current industrial distribution of our country, admits Jiang Jinming, vice governor of Qinghai province, during a government-organized media tour. This geographic mismatch creates one of the most significant infrastructure challenges in modern history. The solution involves constructing massive transmission lines that span the entire country, engineering projects that rival the scale of the solar installations themselves. One completed line already connects Qinghai province to Henman province, carrying clean electricity across vast distances. 2 additional transmission projects are in the planning stages, including an ambitious line to Guangdong province in the southeast, which would transport renewable energy from one corner of the country to the opposite corner, a distance comparable to shipping electricity from New York to Denver. But here's the technical challenge that most people don't understand, and it's causing heated debates among energy experts. China's electricity grid was designed around the predictable, steady output of coal-fired power plants. Solar and wind energy, by their very nature, are variable and less predictable. This fundamental mismatch means that even with massive renewable capacity, the existing infrastructure struggles to efficiently distribute and utilize all the available clean energy. This is an issue that policymakers have recognized and are trying to manage, but it does require big changes to the way coal-fired power plants operate and big changes to the way the transmission network operates, Miley Verda explains. So it's no small task. This raises some uncomfortable questions that deserve honest discussion. Is China's renewable energy boom happening fast enough to make a real difference in global climate outcomes? Can the country overcome the technical and infrastructure challenges quickly enough to maximize the benefits of their massive investments? And perhaps most controversially, should other nations be following China's centralized, government-driven approach to renewable energy deployment? Or does this model come with hidden costs that we're not yet seeing? What do you think? Are we witnessing the beginning of a genuine climate breakthrough, or is this another case of impressive numbers that mask deeper systemic problems? Should we be celebrating China's progress or demanding even more dramatic action from the world's largest emitter? The answers to these questions could determine whether we're looking at the future of successful climate action or just another false dawn in the fight against global warming?